10 years ago, I lived in a small village. I was only 18 years old, young and naive. There was a boy in the village named Ethan. Ethan was handsome, charming, and many girls admired him. I liked him too. At that time, Ethan was 23 years old. He was older than me, but I didn't care. I loved him deeply. I believed he was kind and good, but people often whispered bad things about him. My mother warned me, "Ethan is not a good boy. Stay away from him." My aunt said, "He is trouble, my dear," but I didn't listen. I was blinded by love. One Saturday night, there was a dance party in our village. My friends and I were excited to go. My mother, however, was hesitant. "It is not safe," she said. But I begged her, "Please, Mom, I will stay with my friends." After much pleading, she finally agreed but remained worried. At the party, there were only a few people at first, but as time passed, more people arrived. And then Ethan walked in. My heart started beating fast. He looked at me and smiled. I felt butterflies in my stomach. Ethan asked me to dance, and I was overjoyed. We danced together, laughing and talking between the songs. During the slow songs, he held my hand gently. He made me feel special, like I was the only girl in the world. When the party ended, Ethan whispered, "Let's go for a drive." I hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. I was excited. Ethan had a beautiful car, and everyone in the village admired it. We drove around the village, the cool night air brushing against my face. The stars were twinkling in the sky, and I felt so happy. But suddenly, Ethan took a turn and drove to a lonely place. It was dark, and there were no people around. My heart started to race, but not in a good way. Ethan stopped the car and turned to look at me. He moved closer and tried to kiss me. I pulled away. "No, Ethan, I want to go home," I said firmly. But he didn't listen. He grabbed my hand and touched me in a way that made me uncomfortable. "Stop, Ethan," I shouted, but he got angry. "You are boring," he said coldly. Then, without warning, he opened the car door and pushed me out. I fell onto the cold ground. I was alone. It was dark and silent, except for the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My house was far away, but I had no choice. I started walking. My feet hurt. My shoes were not meant for long walks. The cold wind bit at my skin, and fear filled my heart. I walked for 3 kilometers in the dark. When I finally reached home, I was exhausted. My feet were covered in blisters. I sat on my bed and cried. My heart was broken. I had loved Ethan, but he never cared about me. The next day, I told my friends what had happened. They sighed and said, "Ethan is always like this. He did the same to us." I was shocked. "Why didn't you warn me?" I asked. They shrugged. "Everyone knows." "We thought you knew too." That night, I learned an important lesson. I became stronger. I stopped thinking about Ethan. 2 years later, I moved to the city. I worked hard and built a good life for myself. Now, I am 28 years old. I am married. I am happy. I am expecting my first baby. Ethan on the other hand, is not the same anymore. My friends told me he drinks too much. He had 2 bad marriages, and his wives left him. I feel lucky. My life is good. I believe everything happens for a reason. Sometimes I think about that night. It was painful, but it made me stronger. When I was 20 years old, I lived in the city. I worked in a small bookstore. Every day, I walked to work. I loved my job. I loved the smell of books, the quiet atmosphere, and the kind customers. One day, it started raining. I did not have an umbrella. I stood under a tree, waiting for the rain to stop. Suddenly, a man approached me. He had a big red umbrella. "Do you need help?" he asked. I looked at him. He was tall and kind, with warm eyes. He smiled. I nodded. "Yes, thank you," I said. He walked with me to the bookstore. His name was Daniel. He worked in an office nearby. Before leaving, he asked, "Can I see you again?" I smiled and said, "Maybe." The next day, Daniel came to the bookstore. He bought a book. Then the next day, he bought another one. Soon, he came every day. We talked about books, movies, and life. Daniel was funny. He made me laugh. Slowly, I started to like him. One day, he asked, "Do you want to go for coffee?" I said, "Yes." We went to a small cafe near the bookstore. It was cozy. Daniel told me about his family. He had a younger sister whom he loved very much. He wanted to travel the world. He had big dreams. I told him about my family, too. I was an only child. My parents lived far away. I missed them sometimes. We started meeting often. We went to the park, to the movies, and to the museum. I was happy, but then one day, Daniel stopped coming to the bookstore. I waited for him. A week passed, then 2 weeks. I felt sad. Where is he? I asked myself. I wanted to call him, but I didn't have his number. One evening, it started raining again. I walked home, feeling lonely. Suddenly, I saw a red umbrella. My heart jumped. It was Daniel. He was waiting for me outside my building. "Where were you?" I asked. "I'm sorry," he said. "I had to visit my sister. She was sick." I smiled. "I'm glad you're back," I said. Daniel held the umbrella over me. "Let's go for a walk," he said. We walked in the rain. The streets were wet and shiny. The city lights sparkled. I felt warm inside. After that, we spent more time together. Daniel made me believe in love again. He was kind and patient. Years passed. Now, I am 30 years old. Daniel and I are married. We live in a small house with a beautiful garden. Sometimes, when it rains, we take our red umbrella and go for a walk. I think about the day we met. Life is full of surprises. Sometimes, a small thing like an umbrella can change everything. Thank you for watching and spending time with me today. I hope you enjoyed the story and found it helpful in your English learning journey.